These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Yes, Minnesota sports, Mackie and Judd. Tomorrow night is going to be interesting, gentlemen, at Target Center. I expect the atmosphere to be incredible. Wolves fans have actually been great. Despite the tumultuous season, I haven't looked at like the attendance standings, but the fans that do show up have been loud. They've been engaged. They boo a little bit when the Wolves blow leads and things, but
Yep.
you know, that Lakers game a couple weeks ago, not the play-in Lakers game, but the home game against the Lakers that I believe was actually on national TV, right? Wasn't that an ESPN game?
I think so,
And that crowd was just ready to unleash, and the Lakers just stuck a fork in the Timberwolves early. So I hope for the fans' sake they get their money's worth tomorrow night. But how are you feeling here, Judd? We'll start with you. I just feel like this game tomorrow night, there's so many things that could happen off of it if they don't win it. Mm-hmm. You know, are they really gonna if they blow another? And Doogie told us it's 11 blown double-digit fourth quarter leads for the Wolves this year. 11 double-digit lead in the fourth quarter. Poof, gone, loss.
Yep.
If they stack another one tomorrow night, I'm so curious to see what happens. And so that's you know, it starts tomorrow night. The fork in the road. Which way will they go?
I think if you lose tomorrow night, that something has to change just for appearance's sake, like just for the product's sake. But the Wolves being the Wolves, and this is what's to a certain degree maddening about this team, because the thing to keep in mind is this team has talent. This is not a talent problem. Like, this is not a old school Wolves. They drafted all the wrong guys, and basically they got one guy that can play, and everyone around that one player sucks. This ain't those Wolves. And with what they've done, and again, the personality of this team is damn near despicable, but I think they'll win because that's how they sort of operate. Like, I don't think that they then go and beat the top seeded Denver Nuggets, but like, this team very much is like, has the lead, right? The Lakers game looks great for part of that game. Then they find a way to look awful and blow it. And so now you're like, okay, that's it, right? It's like the Pelicans game. The Pelicans game, they came back and won. They had no business. I mean, they were fighting on the bench. So I actually think that this team, being, for lack of a better term, as schizophrenic as this team has been, I think that they come back now and win because, you know, Phil, I continue to make this comparison. To me, it's the Preezy and Suter Wild, which was the Furious Rallies, which was a team that every time you're like, okay, you know what? Let's just be done with this crap. I'm tired of this. They're like, no, we're not dead yet. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ant comes out and has a great game. I won't be surprised if Cat comes back and after disappearing in the fourth quarter actually has a good game. That's the maddening thing about this team. Now, if they win tomorrow night, do I think their problems are all solved? Absolutely not. If Tim Conley's smart, he's not going to look at a win tomorrow and be like, whew, okay, things are good now. I think that there's cultural changes to be made regardless. But if they come out and lay an egg, it will be very interesting, because while I'm with Dukes, I don't think Glenn Taylor is going to pay Chris Finch to sit on his couch and not work. Boy, it'll be intriguing if they lose and melt down, because, you know, I'm with you, Phil. We've seen a lot of things from Chris Finch. Some, like his basketball mind, are good, but this team seems to lack anyone who's in control.
Yeah, well, real quick, because so Doogie was telling you guys on the bonus scoop session, then he also talked about today on Reckless Speculation scoop session, that he would be shocked if Glenn Taylor, who hated having to pay Tom Thibodeau to sit out and not coach the Wolves, that he would hate to have to do that again with Chris Finch. But if Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry have decided, listen, we just it's not working, I think those, especially Mark Lowry, just as kind of a more new agey business person, right? Fail fast. If you make a mistake, don't compound it by trying to stick with it because we put faith in this person. They also didn't make the decision to bring Chris Finch in. Neither did Tim Connolly, right? Chris Finch was there when all those guys came in. So I get the Glenn angle. Yeah, but like,
Last
They
April.
extended him because his contract was up after it was like 1 year left in his contract, right? So they didn't want him to be he's not one of the highest paid coaches in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that if it's decided that Chris Finch is not the guy to mold this thing, Glenn may put up a fight because he's old and stubborn and sick of paying coaches, which he's been. How many coaches has he paid to sit out in his career, right, as an owner? I'm saying that A-Rod and Laurie might fight that and say, hey, if he's not the guy, he's not the guy. At the end of the day, like, this is a $2 billion organization, so let's figure it out. Dex, where are you at going into this game tomorrow night?
Yeah, it's a huge game. I'd love to see them be in the playoffs. The Wolves fans deserve it. They would like to see some type of payoff, even though you're going to have to play a 1 seed. I know a lot of people don't give the Denver Nuggets a lot of credit for being that 1 seed. Like, people kind of mock them a little bit because they're Denver. They don't have like all the sexy players. They don't have the headlines like LA does and whatnot. And I do think the Wolves could put up a halfway decent fight against the Denver Nuggets. But everything is on the line there tomorrow. It kind of reminds me of, you put all this core together, you went all in here. Can you really just continue to run it back? Like, and Rudy Gobert, it's had its ups, it's had its downs, but you're probably stuck with him for the future. So, like, I don't know if someone's going to be a sucker enough to take him off your hands here. So you have to go in with this as your core for one more try here and see where it leads you. I think they can win. I think they can beat OKC. I know they've given them some fits before, but they can kind of make up for what has been a disappointing regular season if they can beat the Thunder and get into the play-in.
I think if they win, you kind of said it there. If they win, you at least avoid the nuclear disaster of getting beat in the play-in, right? You just, that's a little bit of an exhale. Cat missed almost, 2/3 of the season, and the Rudy integration did not go smoothly, and you had all these things happen, but at least you made the playoffs for the second year in a row for the first time in almost 2 decades. Mm-hmm. Just if you kind of zoom out from the muck, there is something to be said organizationally in just getting to the playoffs twice in a row for the first time in almost 20 years, as pathetic as that sounds. So you can at least avoid that embarrassment and that disaster. And I could actually see them giving Denver some problems in a playoff series. They would give Denver more problems if Jaden McDaniels was available and if Naz Reid, if their bench wasn't like, maybe having to play Nate Knight for 5 minutes or something. And Jordan McLaughlin has turned into a complete pumpkin. So they're kind of forced to lean on these guys that they otherwise would have out of their rotation because depth, right? But even without the depth, I could actually see them, if they win tomorrow night, giving Denver some problems. And if they win, even if it's only like a 5-game series against Denver, a playoff series for Anthony Edwards is valuable at age 21. Last year, he got a taste of it. The more you can get him in these big games, the heart's racing, you're playing through injury, you're playing at that playoff level intensity. There are a lot of good things that can come from winning tomorrow night. But if they lose, what questions have we really answered compared to like 10 months ago? That's my biggest thing. Have you answered the can Rudy and Cat play together question? Have you answered the are you a contender in the Western Conference question? Some people might say yes. The answer is no. But the Wolves might say, boy, too many crazy things happened this year. We almost have to run it back just to see and prove. It's almost kind of a wash because of the Cat injury and all these other things that happen. But if they lose, there's also questions about Tim Connolly, which there already are. There's questions about Chris Finch, which there already are. But all of these things will permeate into June and July if you don't beat Oklahoma City tomorrow night.
So let's go back, though, to what you said, Phil, because I think it's an interesting point and it's an unknown. Laurie and A-Rod and the control that they have, okay? So first of all, keep in mind, too, when the Gobert trade was made, this was supposed to become a playoff team, not a play-in team. This was supposed to be like a 50-win team. This was supposed to be a team that finished firmly within that top 6. They failed miserably. And yes, guys got hurt, but that always feels like such an excuse because guys get hurt. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
The other thing that you brought up, though, that I'd be interested to explore in this conversation is your rip the Band-Aid off, it's not working theory as you applied to Chris Finch. But I would say this, could it be applied to Gobert instead? Because it's been a disaster. Like there is no there. He is fighting on the bench with teammates. He clearly like. I think it's too simple to say, well, they suspended him and that's a mistake. Those conversations, I don't think one guy just said, let's suspend him. I think the team privately is like, this guy is a pain in the ass. And we sort of saw it for 3 quarters that this
It feels
team,
like his teammates tolerate him at best,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
but it
Even
feels like he's
Mike,
a drain.
even Mike Conley, who played with him before, kind of came in and said, there's just a certain way that you have to communicate with him. And he didn't come in and say, I love Rudy. Oh, my God. He said, yeah, I've kind of done this before with Rudy, and I know how to make it work,
And Rudy's not, I don't think, good enough to substantiate that. Like, I don't think he's in that elite. Yeah, he's a pain in the ass, but my God, he does so much well. So I guess my question would be to go back to what you said about deciding quickly that something is not working from a Laurie and A-Rod perspective. Would it be Gobert? Where they say, you know what, we are not going to get back what we gave up, which is sort of what makes the Cat idea a little bit more palatable because you would get a lot back. But would they say Gobert is such a drain that we all made a mistake, but let's act on that mistake now. Let's not try and bang our heads against the wall trying to make something work when you have, it seems like, a large group of people that can't stand the guy.
Yeah. But then, it's, and I don't think you can factor in what you gave up in your decision making this summer. You have to, it's kind of like the 49ers. Well, the 49ers are an actual really well-run organization, so it's not totally like the 49ers. But the 49ers gave up a boatload for Trey Lance. And then, like, a year or two later, for injury reasons and other reasons, and the fact that they're such a good organization, they just found another young quarterback in the 7th round in Brock Purdy, right? They decided, oh, man, yeah, he's just not going to be our starter anymore. Like, they're not thinking about, well, we have to keep jamming this into the wrong keyhole because of what we gave up. They gave up what they gave up, and then time passed, and now circumstances changed, and they might wind up just trading Trey Lance for like 30 cents on the dollar. Those are some of the rumors that are out there in the NFL. So I would say if you lose this game, especially tomorrow night, it does warrant a much closer look at a major change or two. Then you have to decide, let's say it's between Cat and Rudy. You just decide, all right, we need to just create some more space for Ant here. We need to turn one of these $40 million chunks into something else, different assets, right?
Yep.
Is it better to trade Rudy Gobert? Reckless speculation Thursday here. Safe space, okay.
Reckless speculation.
Is it better to trade Rudy Gobert for 25 cents on the dollar and just put your tail between your legs and admit to the whole world what half of the world was telling you a year ago, this is dumb, and just get what you can? Or would it be better to get more for Karl Anthony Towns? You get draft picks, you get current players, right? And almost like double down on the Rudy experiment by keeping him and trading Cat and getting other pieces around. And my gut says at this point, I would rather, if they lose tomorrow night and a big move is necessary, I would almost rather just rip the Gobert Band-Aid off and see if you can get like a complimentary piece or something, but you'd have to take back probably a bad contract or two as well, which is like, it's so hard.
Yeah, I think if you're going to trade Gobert, then you're going to have to inherit an equally as bad contract, right? I mean, just from the swapping and that stuff, you're going to have to inherit a pretty bad contract. With Cat, you can recoup what you lost in the Gobert trade with the first-round picks and whatnot. So you'd be getting better returns for Cat, obviously, but can you find another bad contract, but is it a better fit for you? That's kind of where they have to figure out.
Yeah, go ahead, Judd.
Here's the problem. I can make very good cases from both standpoints that both guys should be gone. And that's the problem. Personally, I would trade Cat, and here's why. I don't think he's going to win. I don't think he's ever going to, unless he is the third guy on a team, then he would certainly have a chance. But as far as being your alpha, I lead this team. I don't think Karl Anthony Towns is ever going to sniff an LOB that way. But the Gobert thing, I think the experiment forget on the floor. I think the experiment from a cultural locker room guy looks like a disaster.
Yeah. So to your cat point real quick, it's funny, before we hit the mics here, I actually wrote down the 3 questions, like the 3 organizational questions that I would have if I were Mark Lowry or Glenn Taylor. All right, I'm the owner of this team, and I want to know why this, why that, and why the other. And one of the first questions I would have, because again, he's the centerpiece of your franchise. He's a supermax player. He's in his prime. My first why question is, why are the Timberwolves 60 games under 500 in 8 years with Karl Anthony Towns when he plays? When he plays in a game, the Timberwolves are 60 games under 500, including playoffs, in 8 years.
Yep.
Why? I want to know. I'm not blaming him for everything. I know the organization has had a hard time finding the right coach and all these things. Like, no one's saying it's all on him. But if you are really that impactful, this is basketball. This isn't the NFL where like there's 53 guys on a roster. There's 22 starting players. You need more than just one guy. In the NBA, if you have a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, your franchise has been changed, right? If you have the guy, your franchise has been changed. And I'm just wondering, in the first couple of years, you might say, all right, well, it was a young nucleus with Levine and Wiggins and whatnot, but then Jimmy Butler got here and they were above 500. Then Jimmy Butler goes away and they're garbage again. Why are they garbage? Or why are they still fighting to be 500? Why are they nowhere near 50 wins ever in the 8 years of Karl Anthony Towns? That's I don't have all the answers, but I would want to know. My second question is, why 19 blown double-digit leads? Finch, again, I'm the owner coming in here. Finch, Rudy, Carl, Ant, everyone. Even the peripheral leader guys like Taurean Prince, Kyle Anderson, Mike Conley. How is that possible? 19? Dude, you only play 82 games. You're telling me 1 in every 4 games, the Wolves blow a double-digit lead and lose.
And your defense
insane.
Your defense was supposed to be markedly better. Like the whole thing was to lock that lead down.
Yes.
And you're nearing 20.
And then my third question would be, okay, guys, why are we seemingly the most undisciplined team in the entire league? Why do we lead the league in technicals, in flagrants? Why are we the blowing leads thing kind of falls in this too. Why are we fighting? Well, it's just basketball, and the intensity's high. The fight that happened between Rudy Gobert and Kyle Anderson fits, and the Jade McDaniels punching a brick wall behind a curtain, it all fits into this lack of emotional intelligence, lack of being able to control, how you react to situations as an organization. If someone can answer me those 3 questions, they can keep their job or avoid getting traded. If I am Mark Lowry or if I am Phil Mackey owning the Timberwolves.
Question 3 is Chris Finch. Question 3, there's no question about it. Watch him coach a game. And look, he knows a lot. I'm not saying he's bad. He is a good technical coach. But when you lack discipline, when you lack ability to control yourself clearly on and off the floor, that comes back to a guy who always looks, and just to be very clear here, unlike Tibbs, I actually like Finch. Like, Finch seems like a decent guy, and he is a definite basketball lifer. So this is not trying to torch him. But watch his post-game pressers. Watch him on the floor. There's this exasperation always of, I mean, dude, after the Lakers game, okay, I know you didn't get the calls, okay? I know. And part of why you don't get the calls is because you're undisciplined and you got more guys that complain than anybody. But when he's at the post-game press conference under his breath saying, the free throws that the Lakers got, when he's trying to pin it on that, this is not the place or time. Now, if you want to call the league post-game, knock yourself out. But I'm going to tell you right now, the answer to question 3 is coaching, because that's where that starts. The answer to question 1, and what I would demand is, I would say, okay, when it comes to Cat, I want you to bring me a study. And here's that study. Guys considered to be, let's just say, top 10 players in this league through the years. 8 years in, correct? 8 years in. Bring me a study of their records, their team's records, and playoff successes or failures. Because Karl Anthony Towns' lack of wins and lack of playoff success is absolutely ridiculous. And that goes back to, I don't think he's a winning player. I don't think he is a winning player. And if this show, which we've done, is going to get on Kirk Cousins for the exact same thing with a far superior regular season record, There is no way that we can't do the exact same thing and actually be harsher on Cat.
Yeah.
I don't care if he had a great 3 quarters.
Well, and if you determine, and I will tweak what you said for my own take on this, which is he is a great skilled player.
Mm-hmm.
He's a highly skilled player. He has great skills, I guess. But there's a difference between being a highly skilled player that, a player that has great skills versus a player that knows how to win and operate and navigate foul trouble, navigate the end of a game. Right? Those are all very nuanced things that you have to sort of figure out if you want to be a champion or the leader of a team. I could still see him much like Kevin Love, because Kevin Love had a little of this too, where he's kind of an emotional guy, and he was kind of immature when he played for the Timberwolves, and even like the early part of his time with LeBron James it was Cleveland, right? He. Like LeBron, there are some stories that like LeBron didn't like him and Kevin Love was kind of being frozen out, and LeBron sent a weird tweet out like 10 years ago or whenever it was, saying something about like just be yourself, and he was kind of subtweeting Kevin Love. They had like a weird thing, but then all of a sudden Kevin Love looked around and said, "All right, yeah, I'm just going to fit in." It was like fit in or get out or something like that was the weird tweet.
Right.
And my point is Kevin Love became an excellent third piece on a championship team. I think that's Karl Anthony Towns. I really do. I think he could be, if he's at some point up for it, if it makes sense, pecking order wise on whatever team he's on, I would like that to be with the Timberwolves. I just don't think you're going to get very far running your whole franchise through Karl Anthony Towns. And they're in the middle of this weird transition where, is it going to be Ant? But then Ant has a chance in a playing game against the Lakers, and I get that he's banged up. Like, here's your chance, man. Cat's playing well in the first half. If you guys just tag team this together, boom, blast off. And he goes 3 for 17. So he's not ready for it. That's the thing. Like, how does this franchise get Cat in the third spot?
I don't.
And if they can't,
they can.
Would it be better to leverage his value and get 2 pieces and some draft picks back and send him to some organization that can slot him in as like a number 2 or a number 3?
I don't think you can give Cat the keys to the car, which this franchise has done completely. Like, I mean, he is in charge, and then say, you know what? Really? We've thought about this long and hard. You're really a 3, which he can. I agree with you. He can go to a team with a star or 2 and be a 3, but that's a guy who can effectively be along for the ride. Cat perceives himself as a captain. Cat thinks that he's in charge, and he will never win, in my opinion, in this league, trying to be that guy. It's not possible. He doesn't have the emotional intelligence. He doesn't have the dog to his game. Like, there's just so many things. He literally, and people were, God bless him, making excuses right and left. He literally played a quarter thinking, well, I'm in foul trouble. Huge game, right? And he's been dominant so far. And by the way, he knows he was the only guy that had a chance to win that game, because Ant was, we've talked about this, having a terrible game. And he literally, like, on the switches is still like, well, if I go too hard on Reeves, I might get a foul. So I'm just not going to. Yeah, think about that for a second.
It's a weird mindset. Like,
yes.
If the end, it's kind of like go back to Kirk Cousins. It's kind of like, wow, the defense was rolling safety help over the top, so can't throw it to Jefferson anymore.
Correct.
And Kevin O'Connell came in. He's like, no, actually, you can. See the Buffalo game,
but then the Giants, but then the playoff game,
right? But like at his core, he's like, well, they roll safety help over the top. I can't throw it to the receiver that I want to. So what are we supposed to do? And Cat's kind of the same way. Well, I mean, I got 5 fouls, which aren't my fault, and they're running a double team at me sometimes, and so I really need to just kind of bow out of this. That's pretty much what happened in the fourth quarter overtime. There's not like another option. So in his mind, the options are, and again, he was marvelous in the first 2.5, 3 quarters. He was marvelous. I feel like we have to say that, right? But the game continues, and it's still, but he put the Wolves in a position to win. Correct. That's what he's supposed to do.
And then he's supposed to complete it.
And then the game continues, and his options in his mind are, well, I can either be aggressive and pick up a 6th foul and be out, or I can just like remove myself from the offense. There's not a middle ground in there somewhere. There's not something you could. And Chris Finch, dude, you know that your star player is feeling this way. There's not some action you can run that gets him an open look in the corner for 5 times in the fourth quarter. So, these are the things, especially if they lose tomorrow night, you have to unpack all of this in the next 2 months and just see what you can or can't or should or shouldn't do once the league year turns over in early July. So,
amen.
Be fun tomorrow night to be on Underdog. Actually, this whole time of year, you got baseball, hockey playoffs, great. NBA, you got major season for golf decks. It's a good time to be on Underdog.
Great time. Actually, they already have some early lines out for some pick'em options on Wolves and Thunder. How about Cat at 23.5 points? Over, under. What do you think? Gut check right now. 23.5 for Cat against the Thunder.
I think he's going to come out and get in a little foul trouble early, and I think it's going to have to be an Ant Conley Rudy game. Okay. So I'm going to take the under. I don't think he's terrible, but I think I'm going to take the under on that.
And then you could also maybe take 26.5 for Anthony Edwards. Then, if Anthony Edwards does bounce back, and why don't you ride a little bit of an under on Josh Giddey? Okay, 37.5 points, rebounds, assists. That is a big time game for Josh Giddey. You can ride these waves at Underdog Fantasy. Promo code SKOR. SKOR. They'll match your first deposit up to $100 if you're a first-time user. We love seeing all the slips that listeners send us. It helps them out at Underdog. It helps us out at SKOR North. Go download the Underdog Fantasy app.
Awesome. So, all right, thanks for hanging with us here. Minnesota Sports with Mackey and Judd on a Reckless Speculation Thursday. We'll see what happens at Target Center tomorrow night. See ya.